For you, how did you first get started? How did you come across visual effects in general?
Yeah, my journey is a little bit more linear. From a very early age, I was, obsessed with science fiction, horror, fantasy, movies, comic books, and books. That was my go-to. And then also the filmmaking process. I had some experience that could be a career path. My grandfather was a screenwriter, and my uncle, creative director of an ad agency. So I had, from a very young age, a good amount of exposure to the filmmaking process, and had the wonderful privilege of being exposed to editing sessions, and I kind of knew all about it. And one thing that really fascinated me, because I was so obsessed with those genres at the time, and that was really the golden age. I was born in 1970, so I'm a 7-year-old kid sitting there watching Star Wars crawl for the first time.
I was literally going to say,
It's
7 years old, you would have gone to, yeah.
letting it wash over, and then all the other subsequent movies. And I became not only obsessed with the imagery, but how the imagery was created. And I've always been a creative person, an artistic person, and making my own artwork, and writing my own things, and also really fascinated with computers, and how they work, and how from a very young age, from the Apple and Apple IIe days, just really pushing to kind of try to find ways to express myself artistically on the computer, and really kind of voracious, looking all around, to Fangoria magazine, Cinema Fantastique like it was kind of a high castle. There was very few people doing it at the time. It was mostly all practical. And then when in the 80s, when CG started to kind of first come into the feature film world with Tron and Last Starfighter, there was something about the design of that, the aesthetic of that, the possibility of that was fascinating to me, and I just wanted to find out how they did that. So that pushed me on a journey of trying to use the computing power that I had, mostly Apple IIe's, in our school, public school. So it's a San Francisco public school computer lab. Aside from some, suspect copying of floppy disks, one of our great things was how to do artwork on the computer, and we started digitizing things by hand. I'd take comic book frames and redraw them by hand and put them onto a koala pad, which is a very rudimentary tablet of the time, and digitize them in by hand. I would make Revell models of the space shuttle or an X-wing, and then go with graph paper and measure it and draw out every cross section of it on the graph paper, then write down all the coordinates of it, and then type it in to a graphics program that would allow me to rotate the wireframe. So like building wireframes by hand. And at that point, there wasn't really a job there. Like, people would say, there's art, I can understand that. There's computers, I can understand that. But art in a computer, why? Like, why would why would you do that? It was such in the infancy of it. But I was pretty obsessed, and I kept on to that, and I decided the best way to express myself was to go to UCLA and try for the UCLA film program. Unlike USC at the time, which was kind of more of a model of, and probably more practical model, honestly, of getting groups together, pitching as director, writer, producer teams, and then hiring your team from the student body like it would be in a studio. Yeah. And the faculty acting as a proxy for the studio. The UCLA method was everybody makes a movie and everybody rotates crew positions on everybody else's movie. So that was really enlightening. The equipment at the time was very, antiquated. I mean, we're animating on the animation stands that they used in Snow White. I mean, we're using moviolas and flatbeds, magnetic tape, so it was all pretty primitive by some respects. But what I still appreciate to this day is that the feeling of the hands-on, like I almost like a sculptural feeling to filmmaking, like the physicality of it. was really great. And I think that, and that goes from everything to like splicing film together by hand with pieces of tape to like moving lights around. I think that served me well as a visual effects artist over the years to have that physical model of a film set, because people throw around the word photoreal and organic, and I'm like, what they mean by that is they want it to look like a real movie, not like we're not doing cinema verite documentary visual effects, you know, we're doing visual effects that have the same qualities and the same language, you know. I mean, Citizen Kane isn't a documentary and Jurassic Park isn't a documentary. There's the artistic decisions that are made, and those artistic decisions are made around practical conventions that have been going on for 100 years. So that hands-on feeling that I got through that film education was great. And I was still really interested in computers and doing computers on the side. I had bought a used Macintosh SE from my roommate who wasn't using his, and I used that to work my way through college doing graphic design mostly. So I always kept my hand in that realm and using it to print out stuff and print some stuff out and do some experimental stuff on animation stands. So I was always there. And when I graduated, I did, you know, my normal rounds as a new film student, PAing and working, you know, prop assistant jobs and commercials and working on set again. But during that time, I really wanted to get into the computer, you know, of it all. I graduated in 92, and in 93, Jurassic Park came out, and I was just like, this is what it's going to be. Everybody's pretty clear. And I was continuing to make money in between film gigs doing graphic design. I was at a CD-ROM place where I was doing cover art for them, graphic design, font work, and marketing stuff. And the interface designer at the time was working on an SGI workstation that had a copy of Power Animator on it. And I would look over her shoulder and be like, that's what I knew from my magazine research. That's what they did. That's what they used in Jurassic Park. So I was like, okay, I got to learn this. There was no education. I'd never seen one at college. There was no training programs available. My training program was a manual, which is no doubt, like, it was super thick. I asked, could I stay after my shift to go through the manual and learn? And I did that for a while until, you know, some other, you know, there was too much UI work, and they're like, hey, can you help out? And so then, you know, not very long after that, I was doing that full time. And then my very first job, you know, in film, television, visual effects, and I've been my entire career, which is now, you know, going into, you know, its 26th year of doing this, was in broadcast visual effects very early on. I was asked to help put a team together by Saban Entertainment to help them with their shows, mostly Power Rangers and the other Saban satellites. And that was there's a lot of folks that ended up all over the place. Producers, flame artists, and you know, in very high positions all around the industry. We all kind of scattered to the winds, and that was our crucible. That's where we kind of really did learn our craft. It was very fast and furious. And I freelanced for a good 7-8 years, and I freelanced with Lonnie and Chris, the co-founders of Zoic Studios. We ended up together at Radium working on Buffy, Angel, Smallville, Firefly. And then as that contract came to an end, we decided to form our own company focused on the artist experience and delivering, you know, high-end creative partnership, focusing on broadcasts. And that's when we got into finishing up Firefly there, Battlestar, finishing up Buffy, finishing up Angel, and CSI, Once Upon a Time.
The list goes on.
You name it. Now we're heavily invested with the Berlantiverse, the Arrowverse shows. So you know, Stargirl, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and also working a lot with Mike Flanagan, Bly Manor, and Midnight Mass, and working on a new show for him as well.